Hello, and welcome to the Grouping and Mapping course, Chapter 2, Lesson 3. In this video, we're going to complete our 3-step plan. Previously, we completed creating our mapping for our procurement manager, Paul. Now, in this video, we're going to extract that data and then present it in a specialized widget. The mapping we created for Paul is the architectural installations mapping, with its two groups, windows and doors. The windows and doors group both have their own sets of properties. Now, let's jump into the application and see how we consume this mapping. Last time, we created our mapping for our procurement manager, Paul, with its two groups, doors and windows, both with their own properties. In order to complete our extracting and presenting steps, we will be using the raw OData widget to complete extraction, and then we'll use the procurement widget in order to complete presentation. While we don't explicitly need to run the raw OData widget before the procurement widget, we'll use it as an opportunity to both better understand the data coming from our grouping, as well as validate it. Also, as we'll see later in this course, in the case where the data is invalid, it will serve as a valuable tool to better refine that data. So, as a first step, we'll view our Windows group in the raw OData widget. With the data populating our widget, we can see all the elements filtered by the group listed in the table below. We can also see these same elements highlighted in the viewer above. The widget gives us a total count of all the elements in the grouping. Plus, we can see the properties we defined on the right side. All the other properties come along with the group by default. Looking at the properties we defined, we can see that the column headers have units. On some properties, we set it manually like here, but in the case of height and width, we use calculated properties, which define these by default. By clicking on a particular element in this column, we will actually have the view zoom to it, and we see it is singly selected in the viewer. This gives us the opportunity to use the properties panel to learn more about that element. This is another tool we can use when refining our groups. But it looks like this Windows group is looking correct. Our height and width seem fairly window sized. Both the height and the width are around 1 meter, and the height tends to be more than the width. This matches our tall windows. So we'll move into our procurement widget where we can actually present the information as a bill of materials. And here's that bill of materials. The default properties which are relevant to our bill of materials have been hidden away, leaving only the height and width that we defined. Now, and there's also a count column. This is the total number of those elements that need to be ordered. This gives us a very convenient way to view the installations that need to be procured for our construction, such as this one. We can see that this window here is very close to a set of windows that are similarly sized. We might be able to talk to our designer and figure out why this window was used, when it would be cheaper to use one of the smaller sizes. There may be some regulations requiring this size versus the other, but the opportunities still exist. But that aside, the Windows group looks really good. Let's try this again with our Doors group. So we'll move back to the raw OData widget, and this time extract our Doors grouping. We now have our Doors data populating our raw OData widget. We can immediately see two issues right off the bat. I've already pointed out the extraneous elements, those two concrete slabs on the second and third floors, that have snuck their way into our grouping. But if we look in the table, we can see that some of our type values are not defined. While this in of itself is not always an issue, it can hint at that there is one. Whether that means going back and redefining the group properties that our type is based off of, or perhaps it's an indication that there are extraneous elements that have snuck their way into our group. Which, in this case, it is. By clicking on these elements, we can see them highlighted in our viewer. We can easily see the 3 concrete slabs, but looking at these other ones, there are drawings for the doors that have also joined this group. For now, we'll skip presenting this data while it still has the issues. Later in the course, we'll refine this grouping, removing the extraneous data from it, filtering it from our report. But in the next video, we'll take the steps that we've been learning over the last few videos and move through them together a bit faster. but will still take time to learn the options we have if the data isn't as easy to find as we would hope. I'll see you then.